lower courts hold the line. I was just talking about the case that's happening with the Oregon National Guard, and as I was talking about it, Judge Immergut came out with a ruling where she extended the ruling to all federal National Guard deployment to Oregon. So I want to talk about this particular issue, this particular case in just a little while, but I want to remind you that the lower courts in the birthright citizenship cases, in the rendition and removal cases like with Abrego Garcia, in the troop deployment cases like in California, and now we're going to have Oregon and then Illinois is coming up, withholding funding cases, federal agency employment cases, the individual rights cases of the immigrants. The lower courts are holding the line even though they are limited by jurisdiction under the Trump v. Casa Supreme Court case. And they are certifying classes and finding ways to comply with the Supreme Court while also finding alternative like class actions and exceptions for state plaintiffs. And so with what's happening in Oregon and in Illinois, the Illinois thing I'll talk to you in just a little while. With the Oregon thing, Donald Trump tried to federalize and deploy Oregon's National Guard, and Judge Immergut put a temporary restraining order on it. So what does Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump do? They federalize the California National Guard to go into Oregon. And so the California Attorney General asks the judge to issue a broad order, one that applies to every National Guard unit in every state and the District of Columbia, stating that none of them can be federalized and deployed to Oregon. So, and as this was going on, the news came right before the hearing that Texas, Donald Trump had directed Abbott, and Abbott had consented, and so the National Guard troops of Texas were now being federalized and being sent to Oregon and Chicago in Illinois. Now, this particular ruling by Judge Immergut, because of Trump v. Casa, because of jurisdictional limitations, only applies to the state of Oregon and the Guard coming into the state of Oregon, saying that defendants are temporarily enjoined from deploying federalized members of the National Guards in Oregon. Federalized members of any National Guard from any state. So, and saying that the deployment of the federalized military is beyond the president's authority and contrary to law. And I believe that the reason why it is beyond the president's authority is because it encroaches into states' rights. It violates posse comitatus, and the injunction, the temporary restraining order was granted because there's a likelihood that the plaintiffs will succeed on the merits on the basis of what is happening with the federalization of the Guard. Now, what I said in the previous video was that the federalization of a Guard from one state then being sent to another state is effectively sending the national military force to that other state, like California to Oregon, which now has given Judge Immergut has now issued the order that no National Guard, federalized National Guard, can come into Oregon for 14 days. And then there will be a review to see if that'll be an extension of that. Now, That same order by Judge Imerga does not apply to Illinois, however. Because of Trump v. Casa, Illinois has to go to court and make the argument that California has made and that Oregon has made, saying that sending Texas Guard is beyond the president's authority. It violates the 10th Amendment and it violates posse comitatus to bring him in for law enforcement purposes. And so it gives, Illinois has to go and make that case to a federal court in Chicago and get that federal court to order the temporary restraining order against the deployment of outside the state, not Illinois Guard, because Donald Trump doesn't have the permission of Governor Pritzker, but he may do it anyway. He may federalize Illinois Guard anyway, and then there's a Texas Guard that is coming. They have to go to court and they have to say that this is a violation of the state's rights. This is a violation of the law under posse comitatus. It is, and it by sending it from Texas to Illinois, you are essentially commandeering Texas's National Guard, taking them away from their everyday jobs to perform federal functions in a different state. That's a novel issue that I believe that at some point will come into the discussion, because what commandeering is the federal authority telling the states what to do and how to impose a federal regulation. So when you federalize the Texas Guard to go and perform law enforcement duties and guard the ICE and DHS and essentially block off the public from being able to see the abuses of ICE and DHS, that's performing law enforcement duties like the case in California. That doing that with the Texas Guard in Illinois is nothing short of commandeering Texas's National Guard, and that comes with Texas's governor's consent and also Tennessee's, and that's kind of troubling. It's the states have 10th Amendment protection, and I don't know why the states don't assert it. The red states want to please Donald Trump, I suppose. But the law as it stands is that the federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems nor command the state's officers to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program. It matters not whether policymaking is involved, and no case-by-case weighing of burdens or benefits is necessary. Such commands are fundamentally incompatible with our constitutional system of dual sovereignty. So it kind of makes you wonder about Donald Trump commandeering the guards from Texas and other states and invading essentially Illinois, and it's going beyond presidential authority, contrary to law and violating the 10th Amendment. And Illinois has to make that case. And somebody asked on the internet, on I think it was Blue Sky, it's like, what happens, when will that happen, that the National Guard of one state has to literally stand in the way and stop the National Guard of another state from coming into that state? Like, say Donald Trump convinces the National Guard of Indiana to come into Illinois, and the governor of Indiana consents to it, and even if he doesn't consent to it, Donald federalizes it anyway. So that's commandeering Indiana's state militia and then sending it to Illinois. And then they're performing acts of law enforcement that violates the Posse Comitatus Act. So there are various violations on different levels. And then there are the violations of due process and illegal search and seizure and depriving you of the right to counsel that's happening behind the line of the National Guard that ICE and DHS is performing every single day. You know, that's happening in Chicago, grappling down from the roof, bringing Black Hawk helicopters, you know, zip tying naked children, you know, sort of just a militaristic attack on American cities that's happening. And it falls into the violation of states' rights. And I hope that Governor Pritzker really goes to court and stops the Guard of Texas from coming on the basis of anti-commandeering, on the basis of the irreparable injury that will befall the people of Illinois, on the basis of deprivation of their rights, and how Texas is going to be harmed by essentially getting its guard commandeered, and the individual harm that is happening to every single Texas guardsman who has to leave their jobs and do what the federal government of Donald Trump wants on American streets in another state. So these are all issues that will be discussed. But for now, Oregon is safe for 14 days and from National Guard invasion. Maybe Donald Trump will now send the actual military, and that'll be another case that Judge Immergut or another judge gets. Remember, Judge Immergut is a Donald Trump appointee. So the whole farce from the fascist fool Stephen Miller that it is a legal insurrection. Legal insurrection. I don't know what that even means. Insurrection is, an uprising against the government and the rule of law. So it's inherently not a legal act. But that's what Stephen Miller called the first ruling of Judge Immergut. So I'm sure there's going to be some more of that ramble coming out from Stephen Miller now. But what we need to push is, if you're in Illinois, call Pritzker's office, tell them to take this to court. Keep calling your state, your alderman in Chicago if you are being harassed by ICE and DHS. Call 911, call the state trooper lines, and let them know that this is happening and you would like for the police to be there to document what's happening, because the federalized militia as well as the DHS ICE agents are not wearing body cams. Don't be surprised with that. They don't want to record their abuses, their constitutional violations. So with that said, here's another video for today. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please share and pass the information on. Remember to stay vigilant. Remember to stay safe. And I'll talk to you soon.